Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
Hi, this is Andy Strickler. I am currently the Dean of Admission and Financial Aid at Connecticut College, located in New London, Connecticut. I've also worked in athletics and admissions at Kalamazoo College, Beloit College, Sinus College, and Guilford College in Greensboro, North Carolina.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a wellness coach at the Keenan Flagler Business School at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, a college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. This week in the news, Andy Strickler is back, and it's Andy Unleashed. He shares what are deans and chief enrollment officers at small colleges talking about these days when they get together and they discuss trends. What's keeping these chief enrollment officers up at night? That's our conversation, and you'll hear part 1 of 2. And then we transition to a brand new interview. And Lisa will be talking to two students, Sam and Sammy. One is a freshman in college, one is a senior in high school, and they're talking about stress and the college admission process. And then Lisa leaves us with her impressions of her visit to Middlebury College. Listen and enjoy.
And now it's time for Hot Topics in the News.
Friends, just one announcement before you hear from Andy. We have a lot of listeners in the South Florida area, anywhere from Miami up to Palm Beach. And I'm considering taking a trip to Miami anytime in the month of February. If somebody in that area wants to host YCBK gathering, question and answer session, text me at 404-664-4340 if that sounds like something that would be of interest to you. All right, let's hear from Andy Strickler. Andy Strickler, good to see you, my friend.
Mark, good to see you. It's been a little too long, man.
It has been. Yeah, we've been more than our 3-month quota. I think we're up more like 4 to 5.
Yeah,
but
summer is basically, you really can't count summer. You're busy. I'm busy. You're traveling to see schools, etc.
It's all good.
Yeah.
So what were your NACAC takeaways this year?
So my NACAC takeaway, get this. You ready for the big NACAC takeaway?
Yeah.
COVID still exists.
Oh, my goodness. Does that mean you didn't make it?
I didn't make it.
Wow.
So I had just finished an 8 of the best trip.
Yeah.
And I had gotten back and I was like, I got a little cold. But because at the time I was in Pennsylvania, my parents are 81 and 85.
Yeah.
With some significant comorbidities, I was like, hey, I'll just test to be on the safe side.
Right.
And then boom, I tested positive for COVID.
Wow.
So I ended up staying in Pennsylvania. I was isolating up at the family lake house, which was great. So instead of hanging out with 6,000 of my closest friends, I was chilling in the woods by myself, catching up on some work. What were your takeaways?
Well, my takeaways are my 87-year-old mom, who's always wanted to take a cruise back to Bermuda, where she grew up. We did a little family reunion cruise from the 23rd of August to the 31st. And there's just no way. You forget this. I sent you a text saying I wasn't going to make it Columbus, and you're like, you're not missing. You're like, you're not missing anything. Mm-hmm. It's Columbus. So my takeaway was there's just no way I could miss 8 days. And then, this is the busiest time of the year.
Right.
Now that everybody's doing early action. I mean, November 1 is like where all the action's at.
I was texting with a college counselor friend the other night, and it was Wednesday night, 9 p.m., and she is scrambling to complete a letter for an October 15th deadline.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
True story.
Well, it's better than I got a couple essays on the 14th at 11:30. Can you look at these?
For and then October 15th deadline.
Oh, no. Right? Then I got a resume at 1 p.m. too.
Yeah.
Look at this. But it's all good. So So listen, I'm putting this on your calendar way in advance. So you know how Minneapolis is next year, right?
Yes.
And you've never made one of these, but we do these sort of in-person question and answer sessions with podcast listeners. And we like to do them like we did LA NACAC last year. We've done SACAC. And so I'm committing to doing one next year. And I mentioned this on the podcast. This guy named Jason said, listen, I got a great place to host.
Okay.
You got it. So I'm going to get that on your calendar well in advance.
Yeah.
You'll come out and get to meet a bunch of our listeners as well as college counselors too. It'll be good.
That would be awesome. I'm all about it.
All right. So we're going to, Andy and I are going to talk about a couple things. The first thing I've asked him to talk about is trends, buzz, when he's traveling with his 8 of the best buddies or his other admission chief enrollment officers. What are the questions, concerns, conversations these days?
So I think there are two things that come to mind, as I travel with and talk to colleagues. First, I travel almost exclusively with deans from small institutions. And one of the concerns is what I would consider to be a somewhat recent trend for students to be seeking higher education opportunities at larger institutions, many of whom happen to be in the South.
Yeah.
But, big schools and southern places have some serious momentum. And all of us deans at small colleges are noticing that our market share is starting to evaporate or erode a little bit. So we're trying to figure out how do we wrap our heads around a couple of different things in terms of the value of a small college, a value of the more intimate, seminar style learning experience. How do we talk about affordability in real and meaningful ways that people get beyond kind of the sticker price? Because so many of our institutions turn out to be more affordable than some larger institutions simply because of our super generous financial aid awards and merit awards and things of that nature. So that's certainly one thing that we are wrestling with and navigating is this, propensity of students to be seeking out, larger institutions right now. And the second one, I think there's a renewed conversation around testing that we're wrestling with in terms of more and more schools at the top of the food chain are moving back to testing. The latest was Princeton this week announced that they were returning for SAT. ACT is required part of the apps, but for the cohort that starts, I think in 27 or 28.
2027. It's funny. I was on a webinar with them a couple of days before.
Okay.
And, I've got a text message group with some of our co-hosts, Julia from Boston, from Pennsylvania, Susan Tree, Susan.
I know Susan.
Yeah. Vince Garcia from Los Angeles and Hillary Dickman from Colorado College. We blow each other's phone up all day, every day.
Yeah.
And I got out of that webinar and I said, Princeton's done. They're going back, because it's that Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Wellesley, UVA group. And I think UVA's coming too. I sensed it.
Yeah.
Wellesley was the only one in there that I felt was going to stay with test optional. And so I kind of put that out there. And Julia said, oh, they've already made that crystal clear to us. They even want testing for the athletes this year. And then that literally was a couple of days before the announcement.
Yeah.
So with this second trend, Andy, is it such where you feel with the rebranding of testing where test optionals being questioned as less than, like if all the big boys are requiring testing, does that mean your academics aren't as good? Like, does it impact you in that way that you're having those conversations? Because test optional's been around forever.
I actually think it's related to two things. One is that the Department of Justice and Department of Education have,
I know,
in some respects, unfairly attached a secondary meeting to test optional around DEI/diversity-oriented recruitment.
Yeah.
Which, a lot of folks went test optional, and when they did, they may have cited diversity concerns as one of the rationales for why they did that. But I think that direct causal association between test optional and DEI/diversity oriented recruitment is a little flawed.
Sure. Do you think that's one of the incentives that's causing some schools to go back to cover themselves?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. You know, especially for some of the more prominent institutions. I mean, you just mentioned UVA, and in UVA, and I'm not involved in any conversations at UVA. I don't really even know anybody at UVA, but UVA has certainly been in the spotlight with the feds. You know, their president has said, you know, and their president resigned, and you know, they were just part of the 9 schools that were offered the compact by the Trump administration. And I think that's part of the conversation that, you know, moving back to requiring testing alleviates some attention and concern regarding the anti-DEI stance and anti-affirmative action stance that the federal government has taken. But one of the things that struck me, and I think this is a conversation we're going to start to see more and more of, and how I framed it in my head is reading through Princeton's press release on the topic. They have indicated that, you know, of their own internal analysis, those students that submitted test scores performed better academically than those who didn't. Which leads to a second question in my head about this whole college admission thing. And what are we trying to accomplish? What's our objective? And they're two subtly different objectives which could be used to answer that question. And is the objective, are we targeting excellence or are we targeting success? Because those are two subtly different things, you know. Princeton didn't say that the students who did not submit test scores are not being successful at Princeton. They are saying they're not as excellent in terms of their academic performance as the students who do submit test scores. And this is one of these things that I think a lot of us wrestle with. You know, are we trying to enroll a class that is going to be successful at Connecticut College?
Yeah.
Or are we trying to enroll a class that is going to be the most excellent class at Connecticut College and therefore has a higher propensity of GPAs north of 3.9? And, you know, I'm not sure we've really had this discussion and debate when it comes to college admission because, you know, places will make compromises for certain institutional priorities when it comes to admit decisions they're making, you know. And in that case, success is more important than excellence, or excellence is being computed in other ways. So these are all the things that I think are going to be wrestled with as this conversation around testing becomes more prominent, as, you know, the drip of schools that are going back to requiring testing becomes a larger and larger cohort, because I don't think it's going to slow down.
No, I can't imagine Duke and Vanderbilt, Northwestern, Rice, Notre Dame, North Carolina, and Emory don't join the group. I mean, you know, there's a few that have carved out their niche, like Columbia, Wake Forest, Michigan, and Chicago, and they've really dug in.
But is Columbia going to be the only Ivy League that's test optional, or are they going to feel the pressure, especially considering political events in the last 12 to 14 months on that campus? Are they going to feel the pressure to go back to testing?
Oh, great questions.
And that's a debate that's probably going on inside of their, you know, conference rooms right now as we speak.
You know, I was having a conversation with one of MIT's biggest overlap schools who vehemently test optional. And they had a problem with MIT releasing the fact that we need to go back because test scores, because what the individual said to me was, our research would say the same thing. So a kid gets a 3.2 instead of a 3.4. If that kid has significant impact on the rest of your students, we want that kid. And that's always been my beef with when they've released these results, and I saw it with Brown, you certainly see it with Caltech, is that when you empower the faculty to have all the decisions, the faculty tend to go for that aspect, but don't necessarily have the lens of the dining room and the dorms and the kid coming back and saying my life was transformed because I had a roommate from Appalachia, and they don't, that kind of stuff doesn't get. That's some of the stuff that you're talking about. Is there a place for measuring some of those other things? And also, is good enough? Right. If someone could come in and do the program,
right,
and be a great contributor and add some new dimension, do we want that kid?
And theoretically, there has been an argument over the course of American history that higher education should be an engine for social and economic mobility.
I know.
And therefore, should we really be targeting excellence, or is there a window to target success and therefore create windows of social and economic mobility that maybe higher ed has moved away from? I don't see these as a pure binary. I think there's a spectrum of possibilities here, but some of the dialogue around testing and some of the dialogue around that 3-4 versus 3-2 thing, both are going to graduate.
Sure.
Both are going to be successful within your program. And we're defining and computing excellence based on one paradigm. And there's part of me that thinks that's short-sighted.
Do you think this ends up putting more pressure on a lot of the liberal arts schools that have been pretty committed to test optional? Do you think there's going to be pressure on schools to go back to testing?
Internally, absolutely. I know of a handful of institutions that I travel with and I'm close with that there is internal pressure from certain constituencies and elements in their community about testing and bringing it back because of other institutions moving in that direction. And we're fearful of looking a little different, being less than, as you said at the beginning of the conversation.
And is it around perception that you're not as academic, or is it, hey, we could be a target for the anti-DEI movement?
I think it's more about the former with elements of the latter sort of hovering around the periphery of that dialogue and conversation.
Friends, when I was editing this, I couldn't help but think, I wonder how the national universities that I think will return to test mandatory admissions would have answered the question I just posed to Andy. And I'm referring to the private, very selective ones like Northwestern, Rice, Notre Dame, Duke, Emory, that I think, and once again, this is just my opinion, I'm speaking for any other members of our co-host team that are going to return to mandatory admissions. And the public ones as well, like North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Virginia that are in purple or light blue states. I anticipate they're going to join that other group, the Northwestern, Rice, Notre Dame, Duke, and Emory group. I find like the private ones in particular, they watch the Ivy League and Stanford like a hawk to see what they are doing. And with 7 of the 8 Ivies and Stanford returning to mandatory admissions, I agree 100% with Andy. These conversations about them returning to testing are happening right now. And in many cases, I believe the decision has already been made. It just hasn't been announced to the public. This group of schools would be, once again, in my opinion, most likely going back to test mandatory admissions for that reason alone. The perception that they're of the same academic caliber as the other institutions. But you may remember about 6 months ago when Andy was on the podcast and we were talking about how Columbia was under fire from the administration. And Andy said, it is times like these that I'm glad I'm at Connecticut College because we can fly under the radar and we're not in the crosshairs of having that target on our back. But one of the core tenets in the compact that the administration is asking colleges to sign is that they're asking colleges to commit to requiring standardized testing for admissions. The administration doesn't like test optional or test free or test flexible admissions because they feel it has been used to expand diversity recruitment, which, to be honest, it is one of the reasons colleges like test optional, test flexible, test free policies. So the elite national universities may actually feel more pressure to return to mandatory testing because of the fear of getting in the crosshairs of the administration over perceived ways of helping diversity that may even exceed their concern about being perceived as having lower academic standards. The reality is, I could have somebody on this podcast and I could ask that question to them, and they're not going to answer that question. And quite honestly, you can't blame them. It is just too much of an incendiary topic. Is there, you may remember we did a recap at the end of the year. We did all these projections of how the business, aspect of college was going to flesh out, and would there be more going to wait lists? And remember, we had all that conversation.
Yeah.
And then you saw what happened. I mean, schools like Harvard, Stanford, Rice, USC, Duke literally were taking kids in August for the first time ever.
Hold on a second. Did you hear about the student who had moved in?
Oh, yeah. You mean the one at Yale?
No, I heard Stanford took a kid early September off the wait list, and the student was at move-in day somewhere else.
Oh, my goodness. I did not hear that one.
They were moving into their residence hall when they got the phone call from Palo Alto.
Wow.
Are you interested? And the kid was like, yes, we are. We're packing the car and we're on our way west.
I never heard that one, but I believe you.
They were at a very prominent, great school in the Midwest. They're moving in. They got the phone call and they're like, peace out. See you, roommate. Nice to meet you, but I'm going somewhere else.
Chief enrollment officer wasn't very happy that day.
And this is in early September.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a lot of that, my take, a lot of that was some of the international concerns with decreased international enrollment.
Could be.
Also NIH funding and needing,
yes,
more revenue, right?
Yes.
Because when I look at that, and others I network with feel the same way, feels like it's inevitable that people will be trying to lock in more EDs.
Oh, guaranteed.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. ED1 and ED2, right? Get the lock-ins.
Yep. And the wait list becomes ED3.
Yeah, sure.
And there are other places that are doing ED before ED1, which is kind of ED0.
Oh, yeah. We did a big, that was last week's episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because some of us out here are seeing a incredible amount of interest in UChicago because of that.
Yep.
Yep. Wake's got something similar, but UChicago really knew how to market theirs extremely well.
Yep. Yep.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to your first point. We've done a lot of podcast episodes on this move to the South. And
yep.
I don't know if you know Andy Borst or not. He was over UIUC, Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. He's now over Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Had him on to talk about that because he made the move. He did it as a chief enrollment officer. He was chief enrollment officer at Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and went over to Georgia.
Yeah.
So what do your colleagues say, if anything, you can do about that? What do you think's going on with that? Do you think that's weather? Do you think that's cost? Do you think that's football and fun and fraternities and merit aid and and tailgating? And because I'll tell you something, and do you know Hillary Dickman? I know you know Matt, obviously, Matt Bonser, and probably know Karen.
I know of Hillary, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was just standing next to Karen at a college fair on Monday night.
Yeah, I'm sure you were. So Hillary's a regular on our podcast.
Yeah.
And she's like you. She's a straight shooter. So she shared how they've been surprised, because she said this on the podcast, so I'm not sharing any trade secrets here. They've been surprised as an office how they have been impacted by CU Boulder, because the whole Deion Sanders and all that.
Yeah.
That has impacted them.
Yep.
So it's not actually only a Southern thing, although most of it is the South. I've said this on this podcast before, I said maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I had more applications to Clemson in the last 2 years than the previous 20.
Right.
And it's impacting my people I network with at the New England boarding schools, the Tennessees, the Clemsons.
Yep.
Certainly Georgia, Florida, Texas. I mean,
Absolutely.
UNC, UV, all those schools, they're up.
Yes.
What's your theory of the case?
Well, I think there's definitely something to what you said, the weather and tailgating and football and this, what would be considered this traditional college experience in the United States. But I also think that there are more layered and complex issues of identity that also flow into this.
Friends, this concludes part 1 of Andy's conversation about what trends deans of admissions are noticing out there. We hope you join us next week for the final part.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
All right, friends, we're going to transition to the first of 6 weeks in a row when you'll be hearing from student voices. I hope you like this series. The next 2 weeks are a little different. You know, I thought Lisa did a great job when she met with 5 parents, all who listen to this podcast. And she talked about how they're handling stress and pressure that kids feel. So I asked her if she would do the same thing again. And she'll be talking to Sam and Sammy today. If you get confused, Sam's the guy, Sammy is the girl. And Sammy's in college. Sam is a freshman, is a senior in high school. And talking about the same thing from a student perspective, you know, stress in the college admission process. Then the next 2 weeks after that, you'll hear from me interviewing Carmen Chavez. If you're a longtime listener of this podcast, I interviewed Carmen 5.5 years ago before she started at Duke. Well, now she's through Duke and she's reflecting back on her Duke experience. I think you're going to find that helpful. And then another student who I interviewed about 1.5 years ago, Dan LaChance, who was just starting at Rochester Institute of Technology. And now he's finishing up. This is his final year. And he's already landed his full-time job. So you'll be hearing from Dan for 2 weeks. So 2 weeks with Sam and Sammy, 2 weeks with Carmen, 2 weeks with Dan, trying to bring you some more student voices. Hope you enjoy. Lisa talking with Sam and Sammy.
Hi, this is Lisa, one of the co-hosts on Your College Bound Kid, and I'm very excited today to be talking to 2 actual real live students/college applicants, and they have graciously agreed to come on and share their experiences about their college application process and where they are in the process. And I think that you will really learn a lot from listening to them. We're going to just talk a little bit about some of the stress and pressures that they are experiencing or have experienced, and try to talk about like where they think it comes from and what suggestions they might have for students, families, college counselors to be more helpful during this incredibly complicated time. So first, I'm going to introduce Samantha. Samantha is a veteran of college admissions because she is a freshman at college, but it's all still the trauma is still fresh in your mind, right, Samantha?
Unfortunately, it is.
So she has lots to say, and we definitely want to hear that. And then we have Sam. Now, Sam is a college senior, so he is just really getting going with this. And he is like living it right now, right? So you will definitely also have a lot of great insights. And, you know, I think that both of these students are very successful and they'll have a lot of suggestions of what students can do to make the process easier based on kind of the trial and error things that they've learned. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask you each to introduce yourself a little bit, just talk about what type of high school you went to, you know, in Samantha's case, what kind of college you're at now. Sam, you could talk about what kind of college you'd like to, you know, maybe attend. And then we'll get going with questions. So, Samantha, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, I'm Samantha. I'm from a medium-sized town in New Jersey. I went to a public high school. I would say the people in my town are pretty well off, and my classmates were very intelligent and competitive. It was a town I would say a lot of families moved to because the high school is considered good. And now I'm a freshman at a big state school in the Midwest. That some might say is it's a prestigious school with a lot of spirit, and I've been having a great time.
All right, Sam, what about you?
Yes, so I am from a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia. I personally attend a very small private school. I would say it's pretty competitive. Kind of similar situation to Samantha. a lot of people come to this private school because it's known for having course rigor. It's known for getting students to that next level in terms of their academic journey. In terms of the college I would like to attend somewhere maybe in the Northeast. I really want to attend maybe a smaller school where you can build a more intimate relationship with your professors and you really feel like you're part of an academic community. That's
All
really
right.
about it.
Perfect. Okay. So in terms of the pressure that you feel, can you, and Sam, I'll start with you because you're doing it right now. Can you tell me about just some of the pressure that you feel to get into like a prestigious university?
Yes, definitely. You definitely feel it from all around. You feel it from your friends, from counselors, from parents, even a little bit from teachers, since they can see where you get into if they are your recommender. You do really feel it from all spots, but it's really important to recognize that that doesn't define you. The certain institution you go to doesn't define you. But it does feel like you are, and everyone's kind of like in your business about it too. Everyone's talking about it. It's just very top of mind, especially for the seniors at your school. And if you go to competitive high school, it might even be from juniors and
Hmm.
sophomores looking up to you and are like, how is this class going to perform? How are they going to fare in the college admissions scene? So it does definitely feel like a lot.
Hmm. Yeah. Was that similar to your experience last year, Samantha?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, coming from a school where people care, a school in a town where people care a lot about what college you go to, I think there's like a stigma that it represents who you are or how intelligent you are, which isn't necessarily always the case. Um, this might sound a little silly, but everyone knows that your college gets posted on your Instagram, and everyone in the entire school can see where you're going in the town. So people are definitely buzzing about it, which creates like additional anxiety. Um, I do think it's important to look for a college that you think you would be happy at. Of course, people desire to go to prestigious schools, but looking for a school that's the best fit for you is really important. And remembering to prioritize yourself and not care what peers and people around you care about, I think is really important.
Mhm. Yeah, let's talk about peers, because you probably spend the most time with them all day long. Sam, how is it going with the peers at your school? You alluded to this a little bit.
So, as someone who is going to competitive high school and in the Georgia area, a lot of people almost are assuming like Georgia Tech is kind of like are going to be our default. Like people really hold that as like the standard and something that you should even go beyond. So, obviously when Georgia Tech comes out, UGA, people are going to be checking. Everyone's going to be saying, "Oh, did you get in? Did you get in? Did you get in?" It really does feel like you're always being checked up on by your student, by the student body. Then in addition to that, you always hear it in the hallways, you always hear it in the cafeteria. People are talking about, "Oh, well, I'm writing about this," or "I'm putting this in my extracurricular section." It really does feel like some people, especially, all they want to talk about is college applications and the college process. It really can get draining. So I think a big thing that you have to do with that is you have to surround yourself with people who, yes, they value that. Obviously, it's a very important part of their life, but there's other things that interest them that ground them beyond just the college process.
Hmm. What was it like for you, Samantha, with your peers?
It was similarly competitive. I was in a friend group of 10 girls. They were all my best friends, but they were all very intelligent. So we were all looking at very similar schools. We had similar preferences in that we wanted prestigious schools with good social lives where the people had fun, but also prioritized learning and growing. I will say that definitely added anxiety for myself that other kids in my grade might not have had, which was unfortunate. But at the same time, I was so grateful for the people who I was surrounding myself with because they're amazing people. And
Hmm.
I wouldn't have wanted any other way.
Hmm. Now, have either of you experienced like social media? Like, how is that playing into it? Like, you've alluded to like things being on your Instagram when you're accepted, but even through the process, is social media any kind of source of anxiety regarding this?
Definitely.
All right.
I'd love to touch on that. A lot of times you see, I think it's I'll even drop the name of the Instagram page if that's allowed. But
Hmm.
a really popular one is your Ivy League roadmap. And that's someone who you really feel like is really fear mongering a lot of people. A lot of people fear or dread about the process because they think their stats aren't good enough or their extracurriculars aren't good enough. A lot of what you see on social media can actually be used to conjure up a lot of fear and stress in addition to the parents, peers, teachers, etc. So it's not just like the actual profiles. It's a lot of the times the content that you're seeing through social media that further can push you to feel more stress.
Yeah. Did you find that, Samantha?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think social media has become such a big part of our lives, especially our generation. And when it comes to college, it's a huge sector of social media that shows up in so many ways. I mean, this is a little bit different from what Sam was saying, but on Snapchat, you have private stories. People share their lives all the time. So everyone in the school figures out who got rejected, who got accepted to various schools, which I would say even 10 years ago, definitely when our parents were growing up, but even 5 or 10 years ago, was considered private information. So I think seeing people's results from colleges is very clearly displayed on social media, which is unfortunate and frankly not normal. I also think going back to the Instagrams, everyone in the entire school can see where you commit when you commit somewhere, which puts people in difficult places. For instance, if you I got rejected from my ED school. That was the worst week of my life. It was very upsetting. And then you see dozens of kids posting on Instagram, I just got into my ED school. Here's a Duke commit. Here's a Northwestern commit. And I think that can be hard for a lot of kids.
Oh God, yes. I mean, when I'm so old, I don't think I knew where any of my friends applied because it was just not a big deal. And we didn't talk about it. I cannot imagine feeling like you're under the microscope.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then also, like, Sam, you're talking about this Instagram, like, and the fear mongering. I guess I didn't realize so much until you said this, that they're fear mongering to you too. I know as a parent, because I have a daughter who's applying to college this fall, they're definitely fear mongering me, right? Everyone wants to sell me their very expensive services that are definitely going to guarantee that my kid is going to get into the Ivy League. Not happening. And, you know, I didn't know they were doing that too. So what do you think the purpose behind all this is? Why is your Ivy League roadmap doing this? Do they sell stuff?
Yeah, and of course, a big portion of it is that they're trying to sell you something. They're trying to sell you a product, sell you a course, sell you services. But it's also that a large part of social media is relying on some sensationalism. It's relying on sort of like absurdity that you can have all these crazy stats and still get rejected. I know another like sort of big college consulting sort of Instagram page is like Lemmy Talks, and he talks about
Oh, I know Lemmy. Yeah.
exactly. And he talks about all these people with crazy extracurriculars, crazy stats, and they got rejected from this school and this school and this school and this school. And it really like sows a lot of dread and fear about, ultimately 4 years that you should be really excited about. So they're doing it for views and they're also doing it to sell a product at the end of the day. So it's two things at once.
hmm So, Sam, how do you think like just kind of living in this like stressful thing is affecting you? Like, do you feel like it's affecting your mental health, your physical health? Like, how is it going?
And this, it's a multifaceted approach, but I try to not talk about college apps as much as I
hmm
possibly can. If I'm going to obviously think about college apps, I'm going to be working on them. I'm going to be theorizing about how I can actually take actionable steps towards improving my essays, or talking about my teacher Rex or something like that, where it's actually actionable and can help me, actually progress further into the process. I try not to talk about it with friends. I try not to be super, super public about it because at the end of the day, I am trying to reclaim some of that privacy that's lost
hmm
in media.
hmm Yeah, and that's what we're always advising kids. Like, well, just don't tell anyone. But Samantha, from what you're saying, that's easier said than done, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I tried to keep the school that I ED to completely private. I actually didn't tell any of my friends, but after I got my results back, I of course shared it with them, and they said, "Oh, we knew the whole time. We knew the whole time." So even if you don't, even if you don't,
hmm
if you try and keep it private, my experience is that it's hard to.
hmm Yeah, there might be some, things that you have to mention about a college or something that will give it away, especially if it's a really popular, well-known, prestigious school. Um, are there particular colleges that you feel like people are especially like, I don't know, nervous about or crazy about? I mean, I know we think like the Ivies and, you know, UC, Northwestern, Stanford, but like what's sort of trendy and hot and making high school kids nervous right now?
Well, at least personally in my school, it's Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
State school, it's flagship. It's a great university, and we're very lucky to have that as our state school. So Georgia Tech really is what's making kids nervous right now. Um, yeah, I would say that's the biggest one for sure.
Mhm. What about for your school, Samantha?
In my personal experience, I think most kids had already accepted that they weren't going to make it to the Ivy League, and I think that next tier of maybe an Emory, a Georgetown, which incredible
Yeah.
schools, but just not Ivy League. Even Wake Forest, University of Michigan. I think people are looking for prestige, but also need to remember where they are in this world. And of course, I mean, the entire process is just so incredibly competitive that a lot of people don't even want to waste their time on applying to a place like Penn or Dartmouth or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, my school was not very Jewish, but I'm Jewish and I have a lot of Jewish friends from the Northeast, from camp and other experiences. And I think a lot of those people gravitate towards state schools with a lot of spirit. So a lot of the people in that community of mine, I would say Michigan, Florida, a Wisconsin to me are like the very
Hmm.
trending schools, and that's from that sector of people. I don't
Yeah. No, it's
know.
interesting. And I think that's interesting. Like, um, Sam, do you feel like people at your school have given up on the Ivies? I know you mentioned that Georgia Tech is in their sights, but
I would say at my school, definitely not. A lot of people are really looking towards them, and like sort of those like Ivy plus schools. Um, I would say a really trendy school at my school for some reason. It's just I go to a very techy school, very sciencey school. A lot of people are like it's dead set on Stanford. Like
hmm.
I don't even know how many people are like I think it was restricted early action. I don't know how many people are doing that to Stanford. I mean, it's at least like I'm in a class of around 70 people, and there might be 5 people, 6 people REing to Stanford, and it's like
Hmm.
I don't want to be like you're not going to get in, but it's like there's not many people that can get in.
Yeah, I mean, Stanford is so hard. I had a meeting with a family and they were asking about it. I'm like, gosh, I never even think of that as a school that anyone can get into. It just seems like it doesn't exist or it's like a fairy tale. But I know they're actually filled with fabulous students and people do get into it, but that's a really tough one,
Yeah,
you know.
I think like
Uh,
two people from my school applied to Stanford.
yeah.
Like irregular. Like
mhm,
it's not really in our picture, personally.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and I suppose like the type of school and just like the focus really kind of affect it. Um,
Mhm.
so you're super stressed. Like, what is the school doing to either help or hurt this?
That's kind of a hard one because I will say the school. I mean, we have our like own like senior events and whatnot to kind of encourage bonding and encourage more relaxation amidst the stress. But I don't I don't know necessarily like the administration is doing so much on the mental health side.
Hmm.
I think that definitely could be improved, but I think something that this is something that my school does, which I think maybe even makes it a little bit worse. But when you get accepted into your first university, you're allowed to wear like a college bound shirt on a given day. Because I go to a private school, we have like a private uniform and etc. So you're able to wear, I think, a college bound shirt on Tuesdays. So when early action decisions come out, and certain people are wearing college bound shirts on October or November, whatever it comes out,
Hmm.
you know
Yeah,
It's worse.
yeah.
That's
that's
just
so
additional
bad.
stress.
Yeah. I
So
would call in sick those days, I think. I just
yeah,
can't do, especially if like you feel like you didn't get in someplace and then you're not wearing that shirt. Ugh,
Hmm.
you know,
cause a lot of
that's,
stress.
yeah, that is a lot of stress. Samantha, how did your school handle things?
I I think my school tried their best. I honestly don't know how much potential there is to really help the students. Like, not to be blunt, but it's a tough process and people have to go through it. And I mean, resources are definitely helpful, but at the end of the day, like, you're gonna get through it. My school has monthly advisory sessions, and I think they spent a lot of junior year and the beginning of senior year focused on that. I don't think kids really take those sessions too seriously, but it'd be like 25 kids sitting in a room with a teacher or a guidance counselor, and you'd maybe talk about your emotions or the college process in general, which I thought was helpful. My school also has guidance counselors in sessions, so if people did want someone to talk to, there was always someone there.
Mhm.
And I would like to clarify, like my school also has like guidance sessions and whatnot. So it's not like everyone's in the dark and you have
Yeah.
for like a little bit of a smaller school, we have that one-on-one time with our counselor. But just in terms of like the mental health side of things, I think it definitely could be improved.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like, I mean, that's like a hard thing. And I think, every year it seems to get a little more stressful. And I don't know if schools are always so good at keeping up with like a change like that happens so rapidly. Um, so what about parents? How's it going with your parents, Sam?
With parents,
And I'm sure they will be listening, but you know.
yes, of course.
Gotta be careful.
Yes. Once again, this is probably like bad or not recommended, but I do try and keep some of the college process like a little bit hidden from them too, because I know if they know every part of it, they're going to like ask me like every single step of the way, oh, how are you doing this? How are you doing this? How are you doing this? What are you doing? And I know that they can get like a little bit like obsessive. Of course, I want them to help me. Of course, I take their feedback, but I do try and keep certain aspects of it like a little bit more safeguarded from them, just to kind of protect them from being too stressed out about it, and kind of to protect me from being too stressed out about it as well.
So you found like there's like you have to have boundaries with your parents about this. Do you guys have a routine? Like I know, and I feel so bad because I, have a college senior and I'm like college, 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 college all the time. But I'm a terrible mother, I guess. But do you guys have a thing where it's like on Sundays at 2, we talk about college for an hour and that's it, and then it's not allowed to be mentioned unless in case of emergency, or is it just sort of more free flowing as it comes up at your house?
Well, here's the thing. I will say a lot of times, actually, last year, we did talk about college admissions in terms of where I wanted to apply, where I was thinking of. So I kind of had that sort of background with them already. And I think they got a sense of that I was committed to the process. I already knew my stuff. I was thinking about it ahead of time. So they didn't necessarily feel like they had to worry as much. But I do like read my mom my essays and I tell her, certain parts about it. So she's not completely in the dark and she doesn't have to worry about it. Um,
Mhm.
but it definitely is a little bit more free flowing. It's free flowing. It's not necessarily, we talk about it at a certain time. It's just kind of whenever it feels right, or whenever I finish a new essay, or whenever I make a new advancement.
Mhm. What about at your house, Samantha?
College was definitely a hot topic in my household, especially with my parents. I think uniquely, my parents were very involved in the process. I think they've read every single one of my supplements and essays. Um, I personally appreciated their help and wanted them to be involved in the process just because I have so much respect for them and their intelligence and I value their opinions. So they were really helpful in that sense. But I don't think I'd recommend having the parents be extremely involved in the process. I think things can get intense or competitive, or maybe you don't agree with what their advice is on your essays. So I definitely think a balance would be good. Maybe having some sort of limit, no reading essays after 9 p.m. People get
Oh God,
cranky. I
yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Something like that probably would be efficient. I got most of my work done before senior year. I worked really hard in August, and so doing that in the summer definitely left more space and time to not have such a strict schedule, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Absolutely. Do you guys feel like your parents are directly pressuring you to get into one school or another? Or Samantha, in your case, did you feel like that?
Definitely not. I was really, really lucky. Both of my parents went to Ivy League schools, so I guess there was some sort of innate underlying feeling that I had to go to a prestigious school, but I don't think my parents ever hoped or wanted me to feel that way. It's just kind of the way it was. Also, now being at the school that I'm at right now, everyone here is so diehard this school. And I would say like 50 or 60% of the friends I've made so far had parents who went here.
Hmm.
So I can see the stress that was put on my college friends for sure, because these kids grow up with their dream school as this school. Um, for me, it luckily wasn't that way. And if parents are listening to this right now, I would beg you to not have your kids grow up with a dream school, especially it being the school that you went to. I know that might be hard to say, that might be hard to execute or do, but I just think it's a dangerous situation to be in with a lot of potential for feelings to be hurt.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I know one of my older daughter's friends, like there's pictures of her just as a newborn with like a certain school's
Hmm.
like onesie, and it just went on, and the family went to all the games. And then, when it came time to apply and go to college, that didn't work out for that student. It was really hard on her. And I kind of made a mental note, like, let's not do that. How is it going with your parents, Sam?
Yes, I will say my parents want me to go to some sort of prestigious institution. They're not necessarily pressuring me towards one specific school, but overall, they want me to do well within the process. Overall, they think going to a prestigious institution will give me some sort of socioeconomic mobility, whether it's just off of prestige or not. But I will say sometimes like your parents don't know everything about the process and they don't know how you know the selectivity of these schools kind of work, and sometimes you can do everything right in a school
Mm-hmm.
just because the amount of seats they have, the amount of majors they've already selected, all of these different things are outside of your control. So, and this kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier, but I think it's just really important that you do have some of those boundaries, because sometimes your parents might disagree with something you've done in your application, and they might pin that as the sole reason you get rejected from some sort of school, when really it's just the nature of college
Mm-hmm.
admissions. It's very sensitive. It's very fickle. So it's really you need to have those boundaries, but also let them in, of course. But um, boundaries are important.
Yeah, and if there's one thing, I mean, for parents who are listening, that as a college counselor and a psychologist, I come across this all the time. Like, it's very different now. It's not the same game as when you applied. It's so much harder. It's so much more complicated. And so, like, the expectations, like, I went to the University of Chicago, right? Everyone's like, oh, you're so smart. Well, when I applied, it was a 50% admit rate, right? So it was not that hard to get into. And, I could certainly not, if you took, high school grad Lisa and put her in this pool, I would not even probably make the first round of reading, so it's very, very different. And you can't have that expectations. And I will tell you this, everyone thinks they know how to do college admissions. Everyone, like, if you went to college, you know how to do it. And as you guys realize, like, it's really hard. Like, they want the essays to be a certain type, a certain way. It's really different than maybe what parents are used to. And so I've seen a lot of friction about that, you know. So parents, educate yourselves. I think that'll help your kids a lot, because it's not the same playing field at all.
Yeah.
100%. I would say my mom did a ton of research on the college process. She read the textbooks, she read the articles, she listened to the podcast, and she was really able to recognize how different the process is now. And that, as a student applying, gave me so much comfort. And her research was super comforting for me because it showed me that everything's going to be okay, and that at least my parents understood the stress of the situation and the differences from our generations.
And I'd also like to say something about the way my parents are handling it. I think my mom is just a great, great person in this whole experience. Shout out to my mom. But I think she's someone who acknowledges that she doesn't know everything. She's acknowledges that it's changed a lot. And I think that's something that's so valuable to have in a parent who acknowledges that they might not know everything. That's something really powerful. And she gives me like the opportunity to say, hey, explore this yourself. Hey, talk to someone about this. Talk to your counselors about this. See what this means for you. I think it's really important that a parent gives you that sort of independence, but still checks in with you, obviously, still wants you to talk to them openly about it. That's something really great.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like you guys come from great parents. And of course, they're your college bound kid listeners. And, these tend to be a more highly educated group of parents when it comes to the difficulty of college admissions. But yeah, it's just really hard.
Friends, this concludes part 1 of 2 of Lisa's conversation about student stress and student pressure with Sammy, a freshman in college, and Sam, a senior in high school. We hope you join us next week for the final part.
And now it's time for our College Spotlight of the Week.
Friends, Lisa did a 20-minute overview of the University of New Hampshire, and she did a 30-minute overview of Bennington College. Today, it's just a 5-minute sort of first impressions chat about Middlebury. And Lisa did this intentionally because we hadn't covered the University of New Hampshire or Bennington on the podcast. But you can go back and listen to, a 30 to 40-minute deeper dive that I did with Sam Prouty, the director of admission at Middlebury College. If you want additional information on Middlebury, I encourage you to listen to that. It's interview 58. That's not episode 58, interview 58. Sometimes people will follow up and they'll say, I looked it up and it's not the number you said. So you got to know, is it episode 58 or interview 58? That's interview 58. And also interview 57, one of my favorites. Sam Prouty makes the case for the more remote or rural college and the advantages of that. So those are a couple in the archive you might want to check out. But for now, let's hear Lisa's impressions of Middlebury College.
So going back to Middlebury, I know we've talked a lot about it on the podcast. So the things that I just wanted to kind of remind people about is that it is a liberal arts college. It's in Middlebury, Vermont, which is a small town. It's like about 2 hours away from Montreal, 3 hours from Boston. And it is 2,800 students. It's known for its languages. They do a really good job with that. English, international studies is a very popular and successful major, and I think environmental studies and computer science. So it's a very interesting school. It's D3, except their ski team is, thebomb.com. They're D1. They have their own ski slopes called the Ski Bowl.
Nice.
And they're residential all 4 years. That school is very writing intensive, as I mentioned earlier. So people are definitely going to be writing at that school. You're going to come out of there knowing how to write. No fraternities and sororities. They do have social houses that you can join and live in if you want to, based on interests. Like I think our guide was in the music house. So they, they invited bands and had like live performances every weekend. But the main thing I just wanted to mention, obviously it's an amazing school, but it's a little hard to get into,
Might be an understatement.
I think the admit rate last year was around 14% overall. We all think like maybe it's better in early decision. And, I know that Hillary has talked about early decision and really using math, which I hate, to figure out like what your chances or how many slots actually are. But today I did math during the information session. I got my calculator out.
September 17th. This is the day Lisa did math.
I even used a ratio formula. I wrote something like as X equals, I did some algebra, I did some math.
Wow.
I know. So, and I think, obviously it's a holistic process, but, I guess they said that they got about 13,000 applications a year. 10,000 of them are regular decision, and they offer about 1,000 spots. So that's like a yield thing, right? They're going to offer more.
Mhm.
But 50 to 66% of their class comes from ED,
Wow.
majority ED1. And they get 2,000 to 3,000 ED applicants. So you're like, okay, well, that's not bad, right? If they have like 700 or 800 first-year students, that's not too bad. But here's the thing she reminded us of.
Ski team.
Like, it's 30% athletes. So all the athletes come in ED. So I did some math and I realized like it's around 200 slots right there. So 200 slots are gone. And then like they're reserving some slots for regular decision, right? So I figured out like really you're looking at maybe like 250 to 300 slots for everybody else for ED. And then there's like, if there's 200 athletes, that's 2,800 ED applicants for 250 spots. And, my depressing formula said that's like, around 9-10%.
Yeah. I'm going to trust your math.
I mean, maybe it's a little off, but I don't think it changes the message here is like, so the main thing I just want to say, and this is super depressing, but as you're making your ED decisions, really think about this. Those athletes suck up a lot of those slots and they artificially inflate the ED acceptance rate.
Yeah.
So that's just one of those facts of life, but you probably have less of a chance than you think, unfortunately.
Well, it's good they shared all of this information with you.
Yeah, no, I think it was great. I don't think she would mind me talking about that on the podcast because, I think, they just want to have people to have like realistic expectations.
Yeah.
So, she said institutional priorities are really a big deal. They really are looking for first generation low income students. 1 year, she said the orchestra people came to her because all the violinists were graduating and they didn't have any like underclassmen who were violinists. And so if you happened to play the violin pretty good that year, you got a bump,
Wow.
and you were otherwise active. But, then there probably weren't any they had all the violinists they needed for the next 4 years. So, you can't count on that. It's very changing. It's very unpredictable. So, yeah. So, but it's a lovely place. It's a beautiful school. It is like kind of out there in the middle of nowhere, but there is that small town that you can walk to. So I didn't feel too isolated. So all in all, it was a great day. Plus, like they had a cafe that we all went to, and it was the Otter Cafe. And you know how I love otters and I'm obsessed with otters. So I had to get.
Who doesn't?
Apparently a lot of people are not as obsessed with otters as me, which I find shocking. But, so yeah. I bought an otter t-shirt, so that was fun. So you'll see me sporting my otter t-shirt around.
I look forward to that.
So yeah, no, but it was a great day. And these are two really distinct, unique, fabulous schools for the right student. And, I just wish that schools like Middlebury or Dartmouth or tomorrow we're going to Williams. They have so many great things, and it just breaks my heart a little bit that so few people can take advantage of them.
Yeah.
Because they are obviously transformative to the people who are there, but there are so many people who would be just as qualified academically who aren't there who could benefit equally well. And that just makes me a little sad, but such is life. Life is not fair. And,
no, but I agree. It'd be nice if they could accept a few more students every year.
I know. Yeah, but they're not going to. So anywho, that is my report from Vermont today.
Thanks, Lisa. I loved all the info on Middlebury, but especially Bennington.
Friends, on Monday's episode, Susan, Kate, and I continue talking about how selectivity can vary so much from major to major or from college to college, even within the same college, and why sometimes colleges don't divulge this information to the public. We also talk about whether a student can do internal transfers. And then we pick up on what Lisa talked about a few minutes ago, what you just heard when discussing Middlebury, we talk about hooked applicants and how hooked applicants process in admissions is very different than unhooked applicants process in admission. Then we start a brand new interview. It's what you need to know about teacher recommendations. And the interview is with Heath Einstein, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, better known as TCU. Friends, I had an interesting meeting with a client the other day. It was with the mom, and she had a really good sense of humor because at the end of the meeting, she said, "I have 2 words for you." I had no idea what she was going to say. She says, "Simone Biles." And I said, "You listen to my podcast." So in that spirit, I decided I'm going to start closing you out with some more quotes from athletes. Today's quote comes from Mia Hamm, an American soccer legend, a 2-time gold medalist on the women's U.S. Olympic team. And here's what Hamm said: "I am building a fire, and every day I train, I add more fuel. At just the right moment, I light the match." See you on Monday, friends. And that's our show. Big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about your college-bound kid on your social media feed. And you can help us stay commercial-free and pay our staff by donating on the yourcollegeboundkid website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. And if you have a question or a recommendation, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK, hit the orange button, and speak. We will do our best to get your question in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I am the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admissions and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Esquivel in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, New London, Connecticut, Hillary Dickman, an Admission Officer at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and our International Admissions Expert, Kevin Newton in Dallas, Texas. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs from Kimberly Bloss. Our reliable webmaster is Stylionis Dimitru. Website updates are done by Joy Stucker. Our image editor is Vlad Honchar. If you want to have a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly YCBK newsletter, YCBK Plus, it is also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights, our blog, and our upcoming events. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.